to come, of seaborne trade volumes from 10 billion tons of cargo annually to 20 billion tons of cargo by the year 2030. African economies are expected to see significant growth and transformation in the coming decades. Transport volumes are estimated to increase up to 8-fold by 2040. The Maritime Administration in Kenya has organized this conference to bring together industry players, policymakers, and investors from the private sector. How the maritime industry can support growth to broaden delegates and well-trained personnel is vital for the development of the maritime sector. We have invited you here today to assist us devise strategies on how, as policymakers, we can collaborate with the industry players to respond to the ever-increasing lack of duly qualified and certificated personnel, particularly how we can equip our youth with the skills necessary to engage in the maritime workforce in the future. The maritime domain offers a wide range of interrelated economic resources that would positively impact on the livelihoods of many Kenyans if the maritime domain and adopt policies that will facilitate Kenya's transformation into a blue economy through sustainable exploitation of our marine resources. I am grateful to all of you for attending this conference, and I look forward to a fruitful deliberations that will drive forward the agenda in the realization of our Vision 2030. All very welcome and feel very warm, and please feel at home and contribute with us so that we can build the maritime sector, not just in Kenya, but in this region and perhaps Africa in general. I now call upon the representative of the Council of Governors, Honorable Ambassador Hussein Dado, Governor Tana River County, to make his remarks. Karibuni sana, and thank you very much.
Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces of the Republic of Kenya, colleague governors present, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, Cabinet Secretaries present, Principal Secretaries, Development Partners, distinguished guests, maritime officials, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, it gives me great pleasure to address this educative forum organized by Kenya Maritime Authority under the Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure and Development. Your Excellency, as a council, we are aware that Kenya Maritime Authority is charged with statutory responsibility to coordinate the implementation of policies relating to maritime affairs and promote the integration of such policies into National Development Plan. We are therefore happy to be involved and engaged with all private sector and international partners in developing of an action plan and a roadmap for developing of the maritime sector to spur national economic development and bring about social change, social progress for Kenyans. Your Excellency, our country and our counties are endowed with high resources. The maritime sector despite accounting for 90% of Kenya's international trade and therefore being a major contributor to the gross domestic product, is one of the least understood industries in Kenya, and consequently, one of the least developed key economic drivers in Kenya, as development in this sector as well as focused on port infrastructure. As county governments, we would like to support your government to change this trend. The national government should, in addition to developing port infrastructure, focus on development of the other key wealth-generating maritime subsectors. Substantial development of Kenyan maritime sector, the development and creation of income-generating economies, which I am sure you are already aware, and those implementing too. Your Excellency, at this juncture, let me at this juncture, as the Chairman of Security in the Council of Governors, congratulate you and your government for your contribution to the world maritime safety by finishing piracy in one of the world's most important waterways. I salute you, our Commander-in-Chief, and through you, our Kenya Defense Forces, for a job well done. Thank you, Excellency. Your Excellency, since this was not our day of making speeches as Council of Governors, which brings together 47 county governments, we'd like to assure you of our support to ensure this sector realizes its potential. We are committed to implementing Vision 2030 under your leadership, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, thank you again for inviting the county government. We as county government look forward to make travel more affordable and lower carbon, to provide jobs and growth for our fast-growing economy, and to a socially cohesive nation. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Allow me, sir, to invite two PowerPoint presentations that will shed light on the opportunities and the challenges in the maritime sector. I will now invite the Director General, Kenya Maritime Authority, Mrs. Nancy Karigido, to make the first presentation.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to start by saying how privileged I am to be standing here at this moment in time to be talking about a sector I am very passionate about because of the potential that it holds. I'll start by reiterating the theme for this conference, that we want to turn from land and to sea for new frontiers for national development. And I urge you to join me as I challenge and then ask you to join me to change our perceptions about the maritime sector. Your Excellency, sir, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, if I asked you for a moment to close your eyes and related infrastructure, but I want to invite you that we work together, and hopefully by the end of my presentation, I will have convinced you that we must change our perception as a country to something much wider that will add value to our economy. By way of background, let me say something very little about Kenya Maritime Authority. We are charged with oversight of the sector and calls for national development. Say that the value of looking at the maritime sector as a whole and not as different components have reaped more benefits for their economies. And if you look at the economies of Singapore, the United Kingdom, Australia, and the UK, and very many others, they've developed because they've learned to look at the whole of the maritime sector and not as different components. And that this by KIPRA, that's the Kenya Institute of Public Policy, and in the beginning, that's where we started to come, before we came up with this conference, in order to lay the foundation for developing our sector. And we want to encourage and hope that by the end of this conference, to make us think of the industry as a whole and not different parts. We want to convince everybody that if we work together, if we then cast a stone in the water, the ripples, which means together and not looking at different parts. The sector is interconnected and it go together. There is more to it, not just the port and related infrastructure. We've not even touched those areas listed together, and they mean a lot of money for our economy. If we talk of maritime education, growing and replicating the young people we saw when we were coming in, the first officer we showed you and the second officer, building many more areas like fishing, tourism. That's what we would want to see, that all areas are developed together and not one at the expense of all others. Those are Kenyan waters, and this is the area, the light blue area, that's where we want to go. We come from land and go and explore and invest in that area. Exclusive economic zone in our water, an area that is very vast. We've got also inland waters, 10,700 square kilometers of it. And this is an area which is also very rich. And when you think about those areas, Lake Turkana, Baringo, the words that come are very encouraging. The biggest lake in the desert lake in Africa, the second deepest lake in the world, home of 13 endangered bird species, bird's paradise. That tells us that there's a lot of wealth we've not even tapped into for the benefits, not just of the communities around that area, but also the entire national economy. Your Excellency, sir, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we start enjoying the benefits of this sector, we must work together jointly, all together, to face and surmount the challenges in the sector. But the most important of which, or the biggest challenge of which, is our disjointed approach. We must team and work together as a team because the whole affects all of us. The maritime sector affects all of us, from Turkana to every corner of Kenya, because due to the nature of our international trade, everything everywhere is touched by shipping. And if we are going to reap the benefits, we must work together so that policies in one sector do not negatively affect another area to the detriment of our economy. We must address also, because of the lack of policies, clear-cut policies, the proliferation of charges that accost this sector and result in a lot of export of our hard-earned foreign currency, and as I'm going to display very shortly, exporting of billions of shillings that could be channeled towards developing this country. Weak enforcement is another area that we need to work together to work, and all those parts will contribute to the betterment of this country. Allow me for 1 minute to take you through very shortly on the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Last year, we managed as a country, as a port, to hit the 1 million container mark through the port of Mombasa. The other reality, or the flip side of that, Your Excellency, is that those containers cost us money, and container transport is only 40% of the cargo that comes through the port of Mombasa. The reality is that for freight alone, transporting those containers, based on the tariff that we have, it cost us 109 billion shillings. That should have been all. But because of this weak, disjointed approach towards tackling the sector, when cargo arrives in Mombasa, then it is then subjected to 21 other charges that results in, only 11 of them, only all shipping lines. And Mr. President, sir, we've not even touched on the piracy risk surcharge and the demurrage on oil that we saw in 2013 was 900 million. Last year, we paid on demurrage on fuel imported into Kenya, 500 million Kenya shillings. We've not also calculated how much it costs us to bring in the other 60% of the cargo. So we are saying that this is an area that we really need to look at. Combined container traffic alone, 179 billion, and that's not money that any of us as Kenyans are contributing to. Allow me to touch on another area, cargo insurance premium exported out of this country because of our policies. Because whatever we do, when we import and export, there are standard rules and regulations that we are supposed to follow. But because of the way we've organized our business, we only follow one of the many international commercial terms, FOB. Meaning, therefore, we've exported our rights and we've allowed the foreign partners to decide for us how we are going to carry our trade. In those circumstances, then, one area that we've really lost is the money we could save here on insurance on our cargo coming here. And we exported on insurance alone 12.2 billion. That is money we could have used to build this economy. And in the last 12 years, you can see that's 85.5 billion. Part of the reason is that when we make our policies, for example, on taxation, we say that we value our imports on cost insurance freight because we don't trust that we will declare as importers the right value if we buy insurance locally. But this is something that it's in our hands and we can change it and stop that bleeding. Because if we don't in these circumstances, we lose the opportunity to develop our insurance companies, to create jobs, and also the government loses chances to make money out of the businesses here. Industry to perform good structure area in the waters, it has constant surveillance, monitoring, and interdiction to be able to assure the investors that everything is okay. So allow me to take a walk, very short walk, on some of the unexplored gold mines that present employment opportunities, training opportunities, so much for our youth, and also foreign exchange earnings in this area. And also the opportunity to develop the international shipping and participate in it as Kenyans. The other one is fishing industry, and I want to quote from the 150,000 metric tons of fish in our EEZ. As necessary. The other area is sports fishing and tourism. And I want to bring to the knowledge of participants that when you want to watch the best tennis in the world, you go to Wimbledon in the UK. But when you want to get the best experience in sport fishing, you come to Malindi. And that's where you have the best opportunity to catch what is in essence the best reward for for sports fishing. That's the fantasy slam, catching 5 different billfish. And this is world renowned. Fastest growing form of how much money it has. If you Mombasa for 4 days, it will be the equivalent of 4,000 tourists arriving by air, based on the activities that they undertake, tours and other Kenyans, safaris and such. Seaweed cultivation, we've got 15 sites that have been identified by Kemfree along the Kenyan coast, and a pilot project has yielded Kenya shillings 480,000 per household. And this therefore presents a lot of potential in an area where the GDP is very low. And we are saying that even this seaweed, we are a net importer, and it is used for developing our cosmetic industry, our food industry, yet we have to import it when we can grow that ourselves. Seafarers' income, we want to replicate, sir, the lady you see in that picture, because she's the future of Kenya. A young person and many others, the ones who leave school and they have nothing to go. And the best thing, you have different levels. If you're exporting labor, you can do it from the lowly skilled, semi-skilled, highly skilled, all those cadres of officers. And from the example there, you have seen that countries that have taken advantage of this phenomenon are able, like Philippines, to earn $4.7 billion in only 1 year. And we want to say that Kenyan trainees are and then exported. First of all, to satisfy our own and then export outside. International shipping, as I had indicated earlier, last year alone, based on the cargo throughput we did for containers only, we exported in excess of 200 billion. But the sad thing is that none of us Kenyans have any contribution to make in this sector. And we are seeking, Your Excellency, the kind of support that this industry needs to be able to tap into even just a little of what this represents, so that we stop bleeding this country of huge foreign exchange reserves. And we can learn from the example of Ethiopia, who came up with the kind of policies that have enabled that country to build a fleet of 18 commercial ships. And this is the way to go, Your Excellency, sir. Finally, sir, I want to hope that I have managed to convince you that we must have a bet that we are losing as a country to develop the entire shipping industry together. Maritime development framework for this country. Thank you, sir.
Your Excellency, distinguished delegates, how then do we optimize the gains in the maritime sector? And I'm going to propose various propositions that we hope this conference will pick up and analyze and get us to move forward. A higher education system, tertiary institutions must roll out the related curriculum. Your Excellency, as shown, over 500,000 jobs in terms of shortage in the maritime sector. But to be globally competitive, we must be able to supply a good amount of seafarers to become a reliable source of seafarers. Your Excellency, as mentioned by Nancy, Philippines has 450,000 seafarers on the oceans and is producing 230,000 seafarers every year from their educational institutions. That is why the industry then looks to Philippines constantly for that support. So we need to provide a good quantity of seafarers on an annual basis. The next intervention, Your Excellency, is safety and security. We must protect our marine resources and activities. Your Excellency, we need to develop the legal framework and roll out a maritime law enforcement capability. That may include a Coast Guard, because within that environment, you're dealing with a civilian interaction, and therefore we must have that capacity to monitor and to enforce and to protect. The third intervention is to put in place an attractive fiscal and regulatory environment. For example, Your Excellency, we have the ships registers with a possibility of registering ships in the country. But those issues like shipbuilding, Your Excellency, we have a situation where, for example, we have a blanket taxation environment for steel. But steel for shipbuilding is a very specific and unique product. The cabotage policy is another very important policy. That policy will require that we put in place a situation where movement along the Kenyan coast, for example, between the Lamu port that we're going to construct, Mombasa port, offshore oil rigs, we must ensure that that kind of movement is specific for Kenyan registered carriers. That way we begin to develop our industry and develop the capacity internally to utilize our waters. Discourage the export of maritime services. She talked about that in terms of insurance. We spent 1.7 billion shillings last year simply for clearing and cleaning containers, a very, very activity that can be done within Kenya. The third intervention we'll be proposing, Your Excellency, is a stronger regulatory framework to ensure fair play and efficiency. As mentioned by Nancy, you have a situation where certain players in the logistics chain cause delays that cost money. And we have to find a way in which we develop our regulation to ensure that we discourage that kind of behavior and everyone takes charge and pays for the delays to ensure that we can actually identify where those delays are taking place and how then we can curtail those costs. The fifth intervention, Your Excellency, which is a very, very low-hanging fruit, is the marine exploitation strategy. Your Excellency, as Nancy mentioned, 9,000 tons of fish processed in Kenya. One factory in the Seychelles processes 400,000 tons of fish a day, of tuna. We're on the same ocean. And culture as well has been mentioned for seaweed farming, which provides opportunities for value addition as well. Intervention 6, which is the underpinning of all of this, is the integrated national maritime policy that ensures everyone is pulling in the same direction, that industry, government, the issues of resource exploitation, safety and security are all inculcated in one strategy that will ensure that we are moving in the right direction with timeframes and action points that are very, very clear.
Your Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, the Cabinet, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. For a blue economy, in other words, the maritime development. The seas and oceans have always been crucial and central to mankind's well-being and development. And the concept of a defined blue economy and maritime development. But in the past, the importance of embracing all the many different ways in which we can gain advantage from our relationship with to prominence in the preparatory process for the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development held in Rio de Janeiro, known to be Rio Plus 20. The Rio Plus 20 was to have a clear focus on the green economy. That is a concept in the context of sustainable development and poverty eradication. But many on the maritime economy, the seas and oceans and maritime industries would be more appropriate for them. There is now a strong international momentum behind this concept, which has been reflected in a number of initiatives, including my own initiative at IMO to create a blueprint maritime transportation system, which we developed with the shipping industry gathered in London following the Rio Plus 20 economy concept as a vital part of Africa's future development. Mr. President, distinguished participants, Africa has a huge potential if you look into and look towards oceans and the seas, as Minister Kamal says. To realize the objective work on Africa, I believe that by establishing African Maritime Development Plan, and such plan should be composed of, first of all, the maritime transport policy development programs, and secondly, maritime leaders and maritime expert development program, and thirdly, the maritime infrastructure development programs, and fourthly, the maritime security management programs. IMO will work closely with UNDP and other United Nations agencies and provide assistance to African countries to establish all more of the World Maritime University and IMRI. They cannot replace with the most growth, as is the case of other African need national maritime in order to identify consistent steps to be followed in improving the status for Kenya as a truly maritime nation. Maritime clusters and working in harmony. Milestone. Congratulated and commended for putting together such a timely and relevant programs. The fact that we are honored today by the presence of His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta serves only to emphasize how central the Japanese past development and towards industrialization. Japan is the first non-Western Europe nation which has industrialized its country. It started 150 years ago. When new government was formed in Japan, the government sent many young people to Europe and America and invited hundreds of teachers, professors from European countries. And then they created really robust education system, including a number of national universities. Strong nation through the process of industrial communication years. In 1945, Japan lost everything, but except one, the very important element, that was the people, particularly for science and technology. And again, what was effective to make Japan industrial policy, in particular for industrial policy for shipping and shipbuilding. The secret of Japan's economic success is maritime development. Japan is surrounded by sea, and therefore industrial centers were easily located along the coastlines. Seas and oceans will connect you to the world. What was possible for Japan should be possible for any nation which has access to the ocean. The maritime development will lead the Kenya and this Eastern Africa to the region in the 21st century. Distinguished much to work on. This is no secret to today's country's maritime community, and it is why you are here today. In this context, I know for maritime training have been developed, and some institutions such as Bandari College and Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology are conducting training. But the lack of training opportunities on board ships for Kenyan cadets is a major concern. It is important to focus on how this can be achieved to ensure that the comprehensive training is available for Kenyan people. The measures to establish national shipping companies or to offer incentives to ships calling on Kenyan ports to make training facility available for Kenyan cadets needs to be identified, evaluated, and negotiated bilaterally. But for me, a more ambitious plan should be establishment of National Seafarers Training Institution with a training ship as many maritime and a half years contribution. But it is not time to become complacent. So we need to maintain your forces. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, turning once again to the global level, there has been a growing appreciation that effective governance and management of the world oceans and the seas and the maritime industry require coordinated action. And Nancy Killing its of this industry. It is really significant and really, and in my view, Kenya has a huge potential in exploring the maritime future of distinguished participants. Turning back to my own statement on African maritime development strategy, the key for success in ensuring maritime development is to go for all of 4 programs simultaneously. Maritime policy, essential in this field. I'm sure that this conference would reconfirm the commitment and the determination of the government in exploring maritime future of Kenya with the really pioneering spirit
If you go here in Nairobi or our city, Kisumu, nobody has any building that is facing the water. All of it, all the buildings, the rear, with all chafu yote tunatupa huko baharini. Lamu and everywhere else. We have nothing that faces the water. And therefore, time has come for us to start facing the water. Even those who are afraid of venturing into the sea, Nancy has expounded enough insurance from the comfort of your office in Nairobi or wherever you would be. You can be major participants within the maritime sector. And Your Excellency, only fools don't learn. We have lessons from Ethiopia, it has been mentioned, Philippines, Sierra Leone, Liberia, all those countries, Seychelles, countries that are just here. Let's remove now the dark glasses that we've been wearing. And I would like to sincerely thank the conference organizers and the stakeholders who have put together this conference, which is the first of its kind in Kenya. Your Excellency, permit me to specifically thank the Director General of IMO, who honored us by coming all the way from London to be here with us on our invitation. Also allow me, Your Excellency, with your permission, to single out Mrs. Nancy Karigidu for her exemplary stewardship of the KMA since its inception, and also her great contribution to IMO as the chairperson of its technical committee. Mungempigia makofi jameni. Today she is not here with her husband, but she is accompanied by her firstborn and her secondborn children. Mogo, can you stand up? And standing. The young man Mogo is a first officer. One more grade and then he becomes a captain. And Elizabeth is a second officer, currently training to become a pilot at KPA. At least we can see the fruits. It's now my great honor to welcome you to make your remarks and also declare this conference, first ever conference since officially open. Your Excellency.
I know. Sekemizu, Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by saying that I'm very pleased to join you today to open Kenya's very first National Maritime Conference. And let me also take time to welcome all of you who are visiting Kenya for the first time. Fittingly indeed, we are joined today by the Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization. And it has not been possible have heretofore laid untapped by Kenyans. Even worse, these 31 counties that we have in the sea have been left open to illegal and criminal exploitation, as well as environmental degradation, because we have invested too little in surveillance, monitoring, and enforcement. We neither know nor properly protect the riches with which we have been favored. This has to change. And today is to begin the development of a clear national plan, the better to harness the potential of our blue economy. My government fully appreciates the opportunity, and that is why we began by giving special attention to maritime activities that fell in two categories: infrastructure, and human resource development. The infrastructure statistics speak for themselves. To choose just one, Mombasa handled 1 million containers of cargo in 2014 in the month of March. We will begin and we will start Lamu Port and Kamau. I hope you're on time because we're not changing that date. Our investment, therefore, has already begun to bear some fruit. And once the International Maritime Organization honored us with recognition as an international trainer, my government was quick to develop a curricula that has since been used to train maritime experts. We are as keen to develop our people's skills as we are to build the infrastructure that supports them. For all our own work, we accept that no nation, standing alone, can realize the potential of its waters. That is why we remain so committed to the International Maritime Organization. We expect that the benefits of our regional or continental. The Charter was itself an important first step in this coordination of policy, which is why Kenya ratified it and why my government international trade to reserves of vital resources both in Kenya and the region. That trend is sure to gather force. As a coastal state in a fast-growing region, Kenya is extraordinarily well placed to make the most of it. I expect then that this conference will give us a coherent national plan, the better to ensure that all of Kenya's shores, that from Kenya's shores, we as Kenyans get our share of that presents trade. Special attention must be paid to education and training so that our skills match the infrastructure we are building. Here with us in hastening the provision of world-class maritime training so that Kenya's young people can take their rightful place in the region and the world. We ourselves will not be idle. The ministry responsible for education will establish a center of excellence at one of our public universities that will provide specialized training, international training. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now reiterate Kenya's support for the International Maritime Organization. My government will continue to support IMO in its quest to develop and maintain a comprehensive regulatory framework for shipping. We will make certain that Kenya maintains and upholds the highest international standards in international shipping, and we will play a part in the work of the organization. I must also thank the Secretary General, who is here supporting the African as one of the principal contributors to the renaissance of Africa's maritime sector. Asante sana. Ladies and gentlemen, as I close, let me say that the abiding lesson of that countries which pursue inward-looking policies will fail to capture the enormous potential that open interaction with other nations bring. My government remains committed to working openly with the global community to make our world safer and more prosperous for all. The maritime sector provides a fine opportunity for us to prove our commitment to these principles. And indeed, going forward, you will see us as a government paying much keener attention to this particular sector and focusing ourselves on the great potential. Focus too much here in my statement. We have forgotten that sea of our land mass. It is about time we began trying to see the potential that this brings us both for job creation, wealth creation, and prosperity for all our peoples. And we as a government will begin to focus much more intensely in this particular sector. So I therefore wish all you delegates of fruitful deliberations.
The Kenya Maritime Fact Book. We request Your Excellency, sir, to kindly launch the Kenya Maritime Fact Book that we have down at the center of the amphitheater. This is the Kenya Maritime Fact Book. And we request His Excellency to His Excellency the President now cutting the tape to officially launch the Kenya Maritime Fact Book. Here we are. Makofi, the book. The first one to the cabinet with a gift. Elizabeth Marani to present the gift to Your Excellency, sir.
The course the ship is traveling. And the symbolism in this is that now
Of the Kenyatta International Conference. Tapigwa picha to officer and the second officer. Just the three. Kindly, one photo. And the cabinet secretary to move so that we have His Excellency with the two officers. Kindly, thank you. His Excellency with the two officers. We request now to have a photo session at the entrance of KICC with the rest of us. At the entrance of KICC.
of the crew who work on board to ensure that like that.
The maritime sector plays a significant role in the social and economic development of Kenya. The country's strategic location along the Indian Ocean coast and its inland waters endows it with the opportunities and potential for transforming into a significant maritime-based economy.
For the longest time as a country, we've focused so because we know from our perspective that it's an area teeming with a lot of wealth for Kenyans, a lot of possibilities for jobs, wealth creation,
for the Kenyan economy, for propelling innovation and
the maritime, and this addresses areas like investments in the industry, like shipbuilding, things like offshore, also fisheries and transport, which is where as a country we focused our attention most, because port industry forms part of this area. But we also have coastal shipping, international. Is the where things like ship finance comes, maritime law, marine insurance.
The maritime sector is wide, and because it's wide, it has a very big role to actually play in creation of jobs and wealth. To start with, we know that under the seas we have things like minerals in the form of oil, gas, and other bulk minerals. We are also aware that the seas are rich with catches of the fish and other crustacea. Those on their own are sources of wealth. Not to mention, the vessels cannot move without actually applying on the waters. And because of applying in the water, they are able to bring in goods and services for Kenya, and the region passes through the port of Mombasa. That means that all what is imported and exported through the port of Mombasa plays a critical role in fueling the growth of the Kenyan and the regional economies.
Blue growth is a long-term strategy to support sustainable growth in the marine and maritime sectors as a whole.
Investments in the sector are skewed. For one, because many people don't understand that it's a very specific area calling for very specific legislation. For example, financing shipping. That's a very specialized area, but people will not understand when you tell them, or when we tell them that it's possible to create mortgages on ships. They don't understand, including even some of the financial sector, because we are used to manna.
The Kenya Maritime Authority is also responsible for search and rescue and identifies additional and advanced measures that may be needed in the future.
The work of the center is to monitor distress frequencies. Any distress, we receive the distress, we acknowledge. We work along with the several stakeholders who assist us in case they are in distress.
The Kenyan coast is set to become the home of a transformative contemporary marina and hotel development. Activity enjoyed by many people in Kenya. Sea anglers are known to contribute substantially to local economies and support many businesses.
There's great scope for development of marine tourism, and we would like the government to take a serious look, even the local governments, because it's right on their doorstep, to take a serious look at assisting because the multiplier factor is also
Here in in the field more attractive to challenges.
Chama cha mabaharia kilipata athari zake baada wafanye kuwa na vyeti vya kuendea baharini. Hapo ndio chanzo cha chama cha mabaharia kupata athari zake.
We have few areas in terms of ship repairs or marine related activities. We'll find that to attach students is a problem, because you will find a lot of students will be attached to one facility.
One of them being able to secure sea time for training and cadets, and also to secure jobs for maritime trained personnel. And this will continue to be a challenge.
Acute shortage. Companies have found it necessary to meet their needs.
They don't have much experience, but when they will work in this industry for 5 years or 10 years, proper for one together.
It comes as no surprise that women are vastly underrepresented in a profession that entails much time away from home. Women are now becoming aware that they too can become seafarers, a field previously limited to men.
Biggest challenge is always bridging the gap between me being a woman and them being men, because it's a male-dominated career.
When all is said and done, there is optimism that there is much that the government and the industry players can do to encourage the growth in supply of skilled seafarers.
This Merchant Seaman Training Centre is a great way for the company to expand. Once we're open, we'll be the first private Merchant Seaman Training Centre in East Africa. We believe if we train to the highest of standards, that we would not only attract people from East Africa, but we would hope to also be attracting people from as far away as the Middle East.
Our aim is that we build capacity so that we are able to then go out there and get the business. And the capacity in future owning own vessels. Of course, targeting training also of seafarers and attachment of.
There are some encouraging positive thoughts voiced in the lead-up to the conference. Business leaders due to present at this conference are refreshingly positive.
See, the maritime industry is the future of Kenya. Yeah? And it's happening so fast, like a wave. Yeah? And if you're not part of that wave, you miss out. Yeah? I would urge every young, budding professional with a passion shipping to join.
They seek to confront challenges head-on and investigate creative solutions rather than simply bemoan the state of the industry.
In 51 years of independence, and knowing how important this sector is to the livelihoods of that such a conference has not taken place. Once you are in the water, they are that can safeguard your interests. That's all.
The maritime industry, essentially transport by sea, is an integral factor in global economy. In modern times, and especially due to the world economy globalization, The greatest volume of goods is conveyed via sea, and this despite technological advances in other modes of transport. Maritime industry covers 90% share in intercontinental trade. However, the general public has limited appreciation due to limited perception of its influence and role as an essential element in terms of social and economic development. It is also a potential source of excellent employment and career opportunities, with millions of people currently working in activities and companies directly and indirectly worldwide. Security and safety, protection of the marine
in the region.
Investments in the sector are skewed. For one, because many people don't understand that it's a very specific area calling for very specific legislation. For example, financing different manner.
The Kenya Maritime Authority is also responsible for search and rescue and identifies additional and advanced
Distress, we are in the...
It is a profile.
Tourists per year
Yes.
Shipping companies
only to have those
between me being a woman and them being men, because it's a male-dominated career.
To the highest of standards.
Our aim is that we build capacity so that we are able getting attachment of our people.
There are some encouraging
The maritime industry is the future of
overseeing commercial and safety, protection of the marine environment, and by extension the maritime industry.
Our role is to ensure that shipping coming into Kenya from international waters is safe in terms of ensuring the safety of the crew who work on board, the cargo it's carrying, and also in terms of its operations to ensure that we do not pose a risk to the marine environment by way of accidents, spillages, and things like that.
The maritime sector plays a significant role in the social and economic development of Kenya. The country's strategic location along the Indian Ocean coast and its inland waters endows it with the opportunities and potential for transforming into a significant maritime-based economy.
For the longest time as a country, we've focused so much on land-based activities and industry, but we feel that it's high time that we shifted focus, or we directed our focus to the maritime sector, because we know from our perspective that it's an